Welcome to the Health Headliner podcast by Tudu Digital. Our content is informational only and not medical advice. Please consult your provider. Now, let's dive into today's headlines.
Imagine a simple vegetable, maybe sitting in your fridge right now, holding the power to significantly cut your risk of one of the world's most common and frankly deadly cancers. What if that was, say, broccoli? Or even a humble Brussels sprout? It almost sounds, well, a bit too simple, doesn't it?
What might not be as simple as it sounds, but yeah, the potential is really there.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're digging into some pretty fascinating research today.
That's right. We are taking a deep dive into recent findings that show this surprising protective effect of cruciferous vegetables against colon cancer.
Things like broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower.
Exactly. Our mission today, we've got a health news article and, more importantly, a detailed scientific paper. We're going to pull out the key insights, give you the clear facts, and figure out what this actually means for, your everyday health.
And it's such an important topic. Just for context, colon cancer. It tragically claimed over 900,000 lives globally back in 2022.
Yeah, it's the world's third most common cancer, second leading cause of cancer deaths. Nearly 2 million new cases every year. It's a huge health issue.
And that's what makes this research so potentially impactful, right? Because while lots of factors play a role in cancer risk, diet is one of the big ones we can actually control.
Definitely. It's a powerful, modifiable risk factor.
So the headline finding from this new work is pretty striking. A systematic review found about a 20% lower risk of colon cancer for people eating more of these cruciferous veggies.
Right, a 20% reduction. That's a really significant number.
It really is. And that headline figure, that's our jumping off point for really unpacking this study. So the core of our dive today is this recent systematic review and meta-analysis published in BMC Gastroenterology.
That's the one. A solid journal.
So this BMC Gastroenterology paper, what were the researchers really trying to pin down here? What was the main question?
Well, their main goal was to bring together all the existing research, systematically, on the link between eating cruciferous vegetables and colon cancer risk.
Okay, synthesizing the evidence.
Exactly.
Right.
But they also wanted to go a step further. They weren't just asking, is there a link?
Yeah.
But trying to find a quantitative dose-response relationship.
Dose response, meaning like how much you need to eat to see an effect.
Precisely. How much is beneficial? Is there a point where more doesn't help? That kind of detail.
That's really useful. So how did they go about gathering all this information? It sounds like a huge undertaking.
It was massive. They meticulously analyzed data from 17 different studies, and we're not talking small numbers here.
Right.
This involved a participant pool of almost 640,000 people.
640,000.
Yeah. And within that group, there were over 97,000 actual cases of colon cancer. So a really robust data set.
Definitely. And where did they find these studies?
They searched 5 major scientific databases: Embase, Scopus, Web of Science, PubMed, Cochrane Library, covering everything up through June 2025.
Okay.
And they combined results from both cohort studies.
The ones that follow people over time?
Yeah, long-term studies.
Okay.
And also case control studies.
Which compare people who have the disease to those who don't.
Exactly. Comparing folks with colon cancer to a similar group without it, looking back at their diets.
Got it. And you mentioned they looked for that how much aspect, the dose response. Did they use specific methods for that?
They did. They used some pretty sophisticated stats, specifically something called restricted cubic spline models.
Okay. Sounds complex. What does that let them do?
It essentially lets them look for nonlinear patterns. So instead of assuming the risk just goes straight down the more you eat, it can find curves, plateaus, those sweet spots we talked about.
Ah, okay. So it doesn't just assume more is always better.
Right. And they were rigorous about quality, too.
Yeah.
They assessed all the included studies, and most of them, 15 out of the 17, were rated as high quality using a standard tool, the Newcastle-Ottawa scale.
That's reassuring. So high-quality studies, massive data set, sophisticated analysis. What did they find? What was the big takeaway, number one?
Well, the main finding from pooling all that data was the significant inverse association.
Inverse meaning more veggies, lower risk.
Exactly. Higher consumption of cruciferous vegetables was clearly linked to a lower risk of colon cancer overall, specifically comparing the highest intake group to the lowest intake group.
Yeah.
The highest intake folks showed a 17% reduction in actually getting colon cancer. The odds ratio was 0.83, and the stats, the 95% confidence interval, showed this was a very unlikely result to happen by chance. The overall pooled odds ratio was 0.80, suggesting a 20% lower risk overall.
So a 17-20% reduction for the highest consumers. That's substantial. But okay, that brings us back to the practical question. How much are we talking about here? Did they find that sweet spot?
They did, and this is maybe the most practical bit. It's fascinating. They saw a significant drop in colon cancer risk starting at around just 20 grams per day of cruciferous vegetables.
20 grams? That sounds tiny. Like, what is that? A couple of Flores of broccoli?
Pretty much, yeah. It's not a huge amount to start seeing a difference. And interestingly, the greatest risk reduction per gram, sort of the best bang for your buck, was observed between 20 and 40 grams per day.
Okay, so efficiency is highest in that initial range.
Seems so. Then the optimal intake, where they saw pretty much the maximum risk reduction, was achieved at 40 to 60 grams per day.
40 to 60 grams still sounds manageable.
Definitely. And beyond that 60-gram mark, the protective effects seemed to plateau. They didn't really see significant additional benefits above 60 grams per day.
So no need to eat, like, pounds of broccoli every day.
Apparently not, according to this analysis. And just for reference, a standard serving of vegetables is often defined as around 80 grams. So 40 to 60 grams is well within, maybe half to 3/4 of a single serving per day.
That makes it feel very doable. Okay, so we know what cruciferous veggies and how much, that 20-60 gram range, optimally 40-60. Now, the really cool part, why? How do these vegetables actually work their magic inside the body? What's the science?
Yeah, this is where the biology gets really interesting. It comes down to unique compounds these vegetables contain, called glucosinolates.
Glucosinolates, okay.
And the key step happens when you chew them or chop them or damage the plant cells in some way.
Right.
That action breaks down these glucosinolates into different compounds, particularly highly bioactive isothiocyanates.
Isothiocyanates.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I've heard that term. And isn't there one specific one that gets talked about a lot?
Yes, the most famous one is sulforaphane. It's found in high amounts in broccoli sprouts, but also in mature broccoli and other cruciferous veg.
And these are the things that give them that distinctive smell when you cook them, that slightly pungent, cabbagey aroma.
That's them. That smell is basically a sign of powerful chemistry happening. And these isothiocyanates, especially sulforaphane, have multiple ways they fight cancer development.
Like what? What are they actually doing?
Well, for one, they can block the activation of carcinogens.
Yeah.
Those are the substances that can cause cancer in the first place, so they kind of disarm them.
Okay, prevention.
Right. They also trigger apoptosis.
Which is programmed cell death.
Exactly. They encourage malignant or pre-malignant cells to basically self-destruct before they become a bigger problem. It's like a cellular quality control mechanism.
Dang. What else?
They can inhibit angiogenesis. That's the process where tumors grow new blood vessels to feed themselves. No blood supply, no tumor growth.
Cutting off the fuel line.
Pretty much. They can also arrest the cell cycle, basically hitting the brakes on the uncontrolled cell division that defines cancer.
So multiple lines of defense.
Absolutely. And sulforaphane specifically does some really interesting things at the genetic level. It inhibits enzymes called histone deacetylases, or HDACs.
HDACs, what do they do?
Well, sometimes cancer cells use HDACs to switch off important tumor suppressor genes like P16 and APC, that normally stop cancer from forming. By inhibiting HDACs, sulforaphane can help switch those protective genes back on.
Wow, so it's reactivating our own natural defenses.
In a way, yes. It can even influence pathways like the beta-catenin pathway using another molecule called ZO1 to suppress cancer stem cells, the sort of seed cells that can regrow tumors.
That is incredibly complex and powerful action from a humble vegetable. Now, the study also mentioned something about geographic differences. That caught my eye.
Yeah, that was an interesting secondary finding. They noticed the protective effect seems stronger in studies conducted in North America and Asia compared to those in Europe or Australia.
Huh. Any idea why?
The researchers suggested a few possibilities. It could be down to differences in overall dietary patterns between regions, maybe different cooking methods.
Oh, does cooking affect these compounds?
It can, yeah. Some methods, like heavy boiling, might reduce the levels of glucosinolates or the enzymes needed to convert them. So culinary practices could play a role. Even the specific types or varieties of cruciferous vegetables commonly eaten might differ.
That makes sense. Okay, so let's bring this back to the listener. We've got the science, the amounts. What are the big implications for you listening right now?
I think the biggest message is that while, yes, colon cancer risk involves genetics and other factors, your diet is a really powerful lever you can pull.
Something you have direct control over.
Absolutely. And this study really strengthens that idea, giving a specific, actionable target, incorporating these cruciferous vegetables.
And it emphasizes that small, consistent changes can add up, right? We're not talking about some radical, unpleasant diet overhaul.
Exactly. Hitting that 20 to 60 gram sweet spot daily is achievable for most people. It's about consistency, not necessarily massive portions.
Plus, these veggies have other good stuff too, don't they? It's not just about the isothiocyanates.
Oh, definitely. Cruciferous vegetables are also packed with fiber, vitamin C, vitamin K, various minerals, and other beneficial plant compounds like flavonoids and carotenoids. So the benefits likely go well beyond just colon cancer protection. It's good for overall health.
Great point. Okay, but we need to be balanced. Good science always acknowledges its limitations. What did the researchers flag as cautions or areas needing more research?
Right, and they were commendably upfront about this. They stressed interpreting the findings with caution. A key issue is what's called methodological heterogeneity.
Meaning the studies they combined were a bit different from each other.
Yeah, mixing case control and cohort studies, for example. Case control studies rely on people remembering their past diet, which can lead to recall bias.
Right. It's hard to perfectly remember what you ate years ago.
Exactly. You might remember differently if you have a diagnosis compared to if you don't. Also, the different studies use various ways to assess diet food frequency questionnaires, 24-hour recalls. These variations can introduce some noise or measurement error into the data.
Okay, what else? Any other potential confounding factors?
Well, there's always the possibility of residual confounding. Even though they adjusted for big factors like age, smoking, BMI, family history, there might be other unmeasured things lurking in the background. Maybe differences in physical activity not fully captured, pesticide exposure, other dietary components, or even genetic susceptibility that they couldn't account for perfectly.
And the geographic spread was a bit limited too, you said.
It was. Mostly North America and Asia. So applying these precise findings directly to populations in, say, Africa or South America, where diets and baseline cancer rates might be very different, requires caution. We need more research there.
Okay. And you mentioned something earlier about publication bias. That sounds potentially worrying.
It's a common issue in meta-analyses. They did find evidence suggesting publication bias might be present. This is the tendency for studies with statistically significant positive results to be more likely published than studies finding no effect or smaller effect.
So the published literature might look a bit more positive than the total reality.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
They used statistical tests like Egger's test, which came back significant, P=0001, and calculated something called the LFK index, which also indicated major bias.
But did they try to account for that?
They did, which is good practice. They used a statistical technique called the trim and fill method. It essentially tries to estimate how many studies might be missing due to bias and adjust the overall result accordingly.
And what happened when they did that?
It slightly weakened the association. The adjusted odds ratio moved from 0.80 to 0.85. So still showing a protective effect, just slightly less pronounced after accounting for potential missing studies.
Okay, so the effect is still there, maybe just a little less strong than it first appeared.
Exactly. And they also did sensitivity analyses, like removing studies one by one. The overall finding of an inverse association held up consistently, suggesting it wasn't just driven by one or two large studies. It seems pretty robust despite the limitations.
So taking it all together, the consistent signal, the plausible biological mechanisms you explained, even acknowledging the limitations, it still paints a pretty compelling picture, doesn't it?
I think so, yes. The consistency across different study types and the strong biological rationale make these findings hard to ignore, even with the necessary scientific caveats.
Which leads to the next logical question. Where does the research go from here? What do the scientists recommend for future studies to build on this?
They laid out a clear path. Firstly, more standardization in how diet is assessed in future large, long-term cohort studies. Using the same tools would make comparisons much cleaner.
Makes sense. Less apples and oranges comparisons.
Right. Secondly, integrating biomarkers. Instead of just asking people what they ate, actually measure the levels of isothiocyanate byproducts in their urine, for example. That gives an objective measure of exposure.
A more direct biological measure.
Exactly. They also called for more mechanistic trials, maybe intervention studies, where high-risk groups supplement with cruciferous vegetables, and researchers track specific biological changes.
To really confirm the cause and effect in humans.
Yes. And crucially, expanding the research geographically. We need more high-quality studies from diverse populations, especially in underrepresented regions like Africa and South America, to see how these findings apply globally.
Understand the role of different diets and environments.
Precisely. And finally, just better reporting standards in published studies, making sure researchers provide all the necessary data for future meta-analyses.
That all sounds like a really solid plan to get even clearer answers. So wrapping this up after our deep dive, the message seems pretty clear, doesn't it? Adding a modest, consistent amount of these cruciferous vegetables to your daily diet looks like a genuinely simple, actionable step you can take for your health.
Absolutely. It's backed by quite a significant body of research now, suggesting a real benefit, particularly for colon health.
It's a powerful reminder, I think, that these everyday choices, what we put on our plates, can have really profound long-term effects.
Definitely. Food is medicine in a very real sense here.
So maybe a final thought for you to ponder. Knowing that something as straightforward as a regular helping of broccoli or cabbage could potentially have this kind of impact. What other seemingly small everyday habits might be quietly shaping your long-term well-being? What's one small, consistent dietary tweak you might think about making starting today?
Good question to reflect on.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. We hope this gives you some useful insights and encourages you to keep exploring and making informed choices for your own health journey.
Thanks for tuning in to the Health Headliner podcast by To Digital. Like and subscribe for more health news and breakthroughs. Stay healthy and informed. See you next time.